So this is the self-development with tactics book. So this is gonna be about the 12 rules of nothing, because it's actually Adam Grant and give and take. You know, the funny thing is, because I've went through the 12 rules of life by Jordan B. Peterson for such a long time that it is so fucking in my mind. It's insane, nearly. It is really nearly insane, but also somehow great, isn't it, that I just actually remember those things and those books, which were pretty great. So I really enjoyed it. I actually tweaked the settings once again. I think because the microphone is somehow differently today. It's way more up front and it's way more by my mouth. Which leads to making it way louder than it was used to, or than I used to have it, which is but still okay. But maybe I should just, oh my fucking god. Let's put it like this. No, just have to quickly see. Oh my god. It is so insanely bright. But I think, it's a little bit better at least. So welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. And once again with a give and take summary on the alanchang.com website. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there is also the audio version of this, which means that you can also just only listen to me while you're on the go as a podcast. So, which is because I just, I recognized actually that a lot of people do not actually know what a podcast is. A podcast is actually something like a radio station, something like, you're going through certain topics or certain things, and somebody's speaking, and this is the exact same thing that I'm doing. Only the one thing is that, it is exactly the same audio as I have in the videos. It's only a little bit post-produced, that it's a little bit nicer to just listen to, and it's a little bit louder because in general it's quite quiet and quite silent when I'm just recording these things, which leads me to actually kind of post-produce them a little bit, so not like just enormously or something, but a little bit. Fortunately enough, I do remember where I've stopped, but I just should do it like this. I do hope the audio isn't too silent actually, but maybe it's even better like this because I'm not too loud, but I'll totally see. I'm just still gonna make another episode for today. So today there will be 2 episodes, which is important because then maybe this episode isn't something for you, and then you just can have to or you just can go to the another episode of today and just listen to this one, or just to all the fucking 276 videos that I have on a podcast, and actually 240 podcast episodes by now. But we will go ahead with pursuing. I've actually been going through the book in the train today, so it might go a little bit better, and I might just still do this after this. So maybe just go through the whole text once, like in different, or as I assume that I will just go through. Like, I won't just go through the whole text because I would just forget it anyway. And therefore, I was just going through the pursuing section somehow. So in collaborative work, powerless communication provides a safe space for new ideas. Asking questions and using powerless speech markers like may and possible invite contrary opinions and signal a willingness to defer. But what does defer mean? Because I actually don't know it. Defer means, so from a classic giver point of view, this signals that the speaker cares primarily about the goals of the group rather than about their personal goals, or about his and or her personal goals, or ego. Actually, they say ego. I would also say goals. This is especially true in collaborative work, where people work together to achieve the same goal. In these scenarios, takers undermine group performance and stifle information sharing. Powerful speech here tends to signal that the taker cares primarily about asserting dominance and ego, and not about the good for the group. cited studies show that powerless speech, which is basically the way of talking and just engaging with other people, that all the givers are using. So the givers use the powerless speech, or the powerless kind of technique, I would even say, and the takers, and also I think, well, the takers do for sure use the power speech. So like with a lot of power, a lot of just, I've been going through what it actually is in, I guess it should have been the last episode or the episode before the last episode. So from today's Friday, so the episode from Wednesday, maybe. It should be. It could be. I don't know, to be honest. I really don't know. But what I'm thinking about right now is what are actually the matchers using? But I just was assuming, okay, maybe they're actually using both sides, or a little bit of both, the powerful speech is more about dominance, more about just kind of supporting yourself and whatsoever. But the powerless speech is like, engaging with the other person, just trying to have a great conversation and those things, quite like, so showing empathy and what there is, or it just feels for me like this. They have never been talking about empathy, by the way. But I guess the matcher, which is quite the person in between the giver and the taker, is actually using both sides to some degree. This is at least what I think. So cited studies show that powerless speech engenders more respect, or engenders more respect and influence in collaborative work, and when a group is passive. In a study of pizza franchises, when employees are proactive, powerful speech leads to 40% lower profits. In contrast, when the work is independent and employees are passive, powerful speech is effective. So I do think, and this is also a great section of the book where they actually explain when powerful, not the powerless, the powerful speech is working, and when you should actually use it and whatsoever, because they're actually always just going against the powerful speech up to this point, which is understandable, because they point out, okay, if you're a giver and if you're using the powerless speech, it helps you with this and that and whatsoever. But still, I do think, and I'm just really grateful that they actually also point it out, that there are some great ways to use powerful speech as well, or even some ways or some scenarios and or some scenarios where you do just really have to use the powerful speech. Could always be the thing. We'll discuss more below, which is basically what I was talking about. So over time, powerless speech can allow you to build a reputation as a helpful contributor rather than a competitor vying for political power. So I do guess it's called vying. It's a V, a Y, a I. So VYING. Yeah. For political power. So if you're seen as someone reliable and pleasant to work, or pleasant, no, it's pleasant to work with, the peer feedback should ultimately benefit your career if your superiors can pattern match and attribute group success to you. Adam Grant gives the example of Volkswagen, which is, the car producer, or, the guys who just make cars. Volkswagen account manager Don Lane, who contributed the "Drive It and You'll Get It" tagline to the creative team despite not getting credit. He presented his idea as, "I know this is against the rules, but I want to give you a sense of what I'm talking about." What do you think of this line? So, drive it and you will get it. It kind of for me just feels like being a taker and actually just going for your ego and only doing what do you want to do and only what you think is the best to do. But it's, for me at least, it seems to be not quite about teamwork and not quite about just working in groups of something. It's just like, if you want to get there, you should go there. So drive it and you will get it. And if you will get it, or if you want to get it, you just have to drive it. But yeah, I don't know what you're thinking about. This would be great. This would actually be great. So hit me up in the comments down below if you're in the YouTube video, or check out all the social media links in the description, and you could definitely hit me up on them as well. I'm quite everywhere, so therefore use the platform you're most convenient with, or the platform you most like, because yeah, people definitely do not like, I don't know, there are a lot of people who like Instagram. I like Instagram, but there are also a lot of people who like Facebook, but I actually do not like Facebook. I don't know why, but I'm just not, I do not like to use it. Therefore I'm just only using it for scheduling everything, and it's primarily only for the people who are just on Facebook and are not on Instagram and or on Twitter, so that they also can see what I'm putting out there. Negotiation, which is the last point of, I think, the powerless and powerful debate somehow, in terms of actually, I think, the powerless being more or just better than the other one. So negotiating. In tense situations that may appear zero-sum to many people, like negotiations over wages or deals, advice seeking is a powerful tool for exercising influence when we lack authority. Advice seeking combines expressing vulnerability, asking questions, and talking tentatively. Naturally, takers tend to avoid advice seeking because it jeopardizes their appearance of control and harms their ego of knowing all the answers. Which makes sense. It totally makes sense that the taker doesn't actually want to just get any advice by anyone, no matter who it is. And it makes sense that the giver is somehow like, okay, I do not know the answer, but I know someone who knows the answer, so therefore I'm just gonna ask him or her, which is definitely okay. I still think for me, asking for things is very, very difficult. It totally depends on the person, and it totally depends on the situation. Persons or people that I'm just really kind of close to, there is no problem. Just, asking them to help me or whatever, but often it's not. Often it's like, I do not want to get the answer by someone else, which was actually this exact same thing today, I guess. Today I was doing some math work, in class during school. And I had to do an exercise. Is it an exercise? So one number, can you say this one? So I had to do an exercise, and I was like, I don't know how this is working. It doesn't make sense to me. And the wonderful colleague next to me, shout out to you and to all the wonderful people in my class, especially the boys. I really like all of them. Very great people, very, very great people. But he was like, it's so easy, and should I tell you? And I was like, no, because I felt like the urge to not really ask him. I really felt the urge of actually just doing it myself. And by the way, I should actually write this down. I was using these just very expensive fucking cards, and I do not know why. So, maths. Homework. Because I would just really forget this. But yeah. So, blah, 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 blah. So advice seeking has 4 benefits. Learning, the advice giver is prompt to clarify details to give you the best advice. This also puts the advisor in a brainstorming mood where she or he will draw on more info than just voting yes or no on a pitch. The advisee benefits from this expanded knowledge, definitely. Because if you're asking someone, and no, I'm just gonna read it, and then I think I do maybe have to add something, but I hopefully do not have to. Perspective taking. To give good advice, advisors have to look at the situation from the advice seeker's point of view. This creates empathy for the advice seeker rather than setting up an adversarial structure. Commitment. Because the advisor has put personal effort into the advice seeker situation, she feels commitment to follow through, especially if the top ideas are her own. And the last one is the flattery. When you ask for someone for advice, you grant her prestige by showing you admire her knowledge and or his knowledge and wisdom. It makes her feel important. And this is exactly what I wanted to point out. It is definitely letting people feel very important and very just prestigious and all what they actually said and already picked out. But it's, it really is this. And it's really the way, if somebody comes up to you and asks like, okay, could you please show me how this is working? Now guess why? This person is actually coming up to you and is asking you, because this person knows that you are actually able to do what they need, and that this person is actually just willing to learn something from you because they know that you are able to do this. And isn't this just nice? Isn't this just amazing, the feeling, if you're just thinking about this? And people really like it. And I've seen it a lot, and I've also seen it with myself, if people really come up to me and ask me like, okay, how could I do this? It's, really lets me feel good, and it makes sense. And I actually even did it somehow, I don't know when, and I don't know how often, but at least once, I did it like consciously, like, asking someone for advice because I knew they will like it. At least I think I have. I'm very sorry if I haven't, but I think I have. I really think. It would be nice to actually just, remember the whole situation and the whole thing. But yeah. So the advisor is also prone to liking the advice seeker more through resolving cognitive dissonance. There's no way, which is now quote unquote, there's no way I would help her if I didn't like her, so this must mean I actually like her. Which somehow can make sense, but I do think, no matter whom you're just hitting up and asking for advice, I do think everybody will give you something. I really do. I don't know. But maybe it's just because I'm always thinking of good people, or, I'm always seeing the good in the people. And maybe I just don't see, that there are also bad people who would actually be like, I won't give you an advice because I hate you. But I wouldn't understand this, why would you? But I also understand, I truly understand why people would do this, because they don't just like the person, and yeah, don't judge this, Who knows what happened before? Nobody. Advice seeking works for all three reciprocity styles in the counterparty. Takers love having their ego massaged, and matchers like racking up credits they can use later, and givers feel helpful. It makes sense. It really makes sense that all three of them actually like it. So Adam Grant gives an anecdote of Annie, a scientist who was a part of downsized company branch in the Midwest. She could keep her job by transferring to the East Coast, but this would mean giving up her nighttime MBA program. She tried to argue for her position with a few managers, but made no progress. Ultimately, she reached out to an HR manager and asked for advice. If you were in my position, what would you do? And the HR manager became her advocate. She took the woman's perspective, learned new details, and found through the department head that the company had a private jet that Annie could ride on. Now the HR manager was committed to delivering on his solution, and if Annie had lobbied more assertively, she might never have learned about the jet. Amazing story. But I do just think about, what kind of an employee does this have to be that they actually kind of, even tell them, okay, just use our jet. It's totally okay. Isn't it fucking expensive? And is it, for me it would make sense, okay. If the CEO is flying with a private jet, I understand this. I really understand this because, he might have he just owns the fucking company, and he might have just go to a lot of meetings every year, every day, every just month, every week, whatsoever, and then I understand this. But for just an employee, it's nice. It totally is nice. But yeah. Research examples. Experimental subjects were asked to negotiate the sale of commercial property. Sellers who focused on getting the highest price reached a deal only 8% of the time. Sellers who asked the buyer for advice reached a deal 42% of the time. Amazing. Really amazing. So in a workforce across industries, seeking advice is one of the most effective ways to carry influence and be rated as an effective manager, in addition to rational persuasion and inspirational appeal. This is an interesting study. All three of these works work in all directions of the ORG chart, in brackets downwards, lateral, and upward. Ingratiation, exchange, and personal appeal were used primarily in downward or lateral directions and not upward. They were ineffective at changing effectiveness rating. Finally, legitimating, which is do it because it's, or in brackets actually, do it because it's what the rules say, or pressure correlate negatively with effectiveness. I, by the way, do not know what I'm actually just reading about. I actually really do not know, because I'm actually only kind of forcing myself, or kind of not forcing, but focusing myself on, reading everything nicely, just recognizing how I speak, and then being sure that I won't somehow absorb some words, or just kind of pronounce them so wrongly, or so kind of poorly, that you can actually hear them, and which is not good for a podcast, essentially. Executives seeking board seats are most effective when asking a current board director for advice rather than complimenting. In an experiment environment, advice seekers were more likely to be recommended for promotion than non-seekers. At first, and still now somehow, I do really think that being someone who only seeks advice would also be wrong, and would also not be good for your career. But as I'm just reading through this, it just seems to be like, no, it is actually fine, and it is actually good, and whatsoever. So yeah. But now this is actually the part sorry for actually kind of stopping. And this is actually part that I was talking about, and I actually already made the description for the whole episode. So I do hope that I do not have to cut a lot of things, and I don't have to add a lot of things. So when powerful communication works. When does powerful communication work? I wish Adam Grant explored this more in Give and Take, though it would detect or detract from his message. Takers are judged by group members as more competent and authoritative. Sometimes this works against them when it discourages new ideas, for example, but when listeners are passive, dutiful flowers, powerful communication does work. Is it actually dutiful? I think it is. So it's DUTIFUL. So we see powerful communication work in Steve Jobs and TED Talks, and I imagine it works in tense military situations. The whole thing with Steve Jobs is always like, he's seen as one of the greatest entrepreneurs, and he really is. He really is. He made a very great company, and but he was nice to the employees, and this is the whole problem that I'm having with Steve Jobs somehow. Just he's a really prestigious man, and just really love his work and all these things, for sure. For really sure, but I do not like when people are just giving a fuck about their employees actually, and those things. I kind of feel like, okay, you can have a great company, and you can also have a very successful company by still being just very nice and generous to all the people. I do really think that, and it would be nice. And this is also what Gary Vee is talking about quite often. He's been talking about the same issue as I just pointed out, and he's also saying like, okay, he just wants to lead a company and wants to lead his employees and whatsoever, but he just wants to be nice to them. He doesn't want to be an asshole to them. But yeah. Does it work when the listener knows she is in a subordinate and receptive position, so ego is not a play? When listening to Steve Jobs, an Apple fan already considered him a genius and is in a receptively subservient position in buying his products. I want to be led as a dutiful follower. and now something in brackets, powerful speech seems to confer more status when the task is independent rather than communal, and when the working environment rewards individual achievement rather than cooperation. Which makes sense, if you're using the powerless way of speaking and powerless techniques in the words and sentences or whatever it would be, it just makes sense that you're not using them. So you're using them in a group, and it somehow makes sense that you're not using them when you are not in a group. But yeah, let's see and go ahead. Chapter 6, why some givers burn out, but others are on fire. Which is something that I quite, I stuck a little bit, to be honest, because I thought like, why? Why exactly? But I think we'll just go ahead. So, it is a myth that self-interest and other interests lie on the same spectrum, and that caring about yourself necessarily means not caring about others. I do think there has to be a certain degree of actually you caring about yourself, because if you're not doing this, I do guess that it wouldn't be too nice for you. And I do think you would just, you would not take care of yourself, and this would be bad and whatsoever. So Give and Take argues that self-interest and other interests are completely independent motivations. You can have both be very strong or both be weak, and forming this 2x2 or 2 times 2 matrix, which is now a matrix, and I'm gonna, nice. Now you can actually see it. So this is the matrix. On the top, so it is actually 2 by 2. On the top is the low other interest and the high other interest next to each other. And on the left side, there is the low self-interest, which is above the high self-interest. And when you're looking at the low self-interest combined with the low other interest, you see apathetic, whatever this actually means. And if you compare the low self-interest and the high other interest, you see selfless and self-sacrificing giver. When you have a look at the bottom part, which is high self-interest and low other interest, you see the taker, the classical taker. Then the high other interest and the high self-interest is otherish, which is a successful giver. Makes sense, it really makes sense, and this is also something that he actually pointed out, I think in the very top of the summary, that you actually as a giver really have to take also, and to really care about yourself as well, because if not, you're only really taking care about somebody else, and you're kind of just, going to get crippled and fucked up, and those things. So givers are universally high in other interests, by definition, but givers vary in self-interest. Givers who have low self-interest are selfless. They sacrifice their own gain for the benefit of others. This pathological altruism decreases their own well-being and risks burnout. Interestingly, selfless givers also tend not to ask for help, as they are determined to be in the helper role and don't want to inconvenience others. Givers who have high self-interest are otherish, which means they are ambitious and have goals relating to gaining influence and attaining excellence. Otherish givers still give more than they receive, but they are discriminate with their time, choosing how and to whom they give. They want to grow the overall pie and see the world as more than zero sum, but they still want a piece of that pie. Maintaining a balance between self-interest and other interest is important for mental health. This is true even in trusting relationships like marriages. Even though otherish givers superficially appear less giving than selfless givers, they have greater stamina and contribute more over time. In comparison to matchers and takers, otherish givers build a reserve of happiness that fuel their work. With that being said, it's actually very, very nicely. It went very, very nicely today. I'm just not seeing as clearly as I should be. which is always like, to the end of some episodes, somehow get really dizzy. I don't know how, maybe I should drink something actually. But yeah, this is actually it with the episode. I do hope that you liked it. I do hope that there was something in it for you. And I do also hope that I do not have to add something to my pre-made description. But yeah. Still remember how you're gonna be remembered, which maybe means that you're giving something back to the people or giving back to the world, whatever you're thinking about. And yeah, with that being said, I wish you the best and I'll see you. I love you.